2025, what a year to reflect on. I kind of refuse to look back on this year with too much thought. A 9-year, the year of the snake, the start of my personal Saturn return. I'm not gonna look back on it, not in any context other than my reading. Because of course I have to come and tell you about the best, ooh, spoiler, the best books that I read this year. And what I will say is that even though this year was treacherous for many reasons, for a lot of us, in terms of reading, in terms of the books that at least I personally picked up, but I think generally speaking in terms of releases from this year, there were some bangers. So yes, it is time for me to make sure that you know about all of the best books that I read this year. We are 2 weeks out from the end of the year. I have read 66 books, not including the books that I DNF'd, and I want to tell you about the best book that I read each month. I've picked a book from every month, but I've also thrown in just a few more because honestly, there were a lot of standouts this year. And I have to tell you about all of them. If you're new here, hello, I'm Cameron. This is Slutty Book Club. I talk about mainly literary fiction, a bit of memoir, a bit of other non-fiction, and some other stuff from time to time if I feel like it. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram. There's a lot of good stuff over there. And if you enjoyed this video, the button's down there. They help a lot. Thank you for being here. I'm gonna jump right into the best books of 2025 as per my reading. And what's so fascinating to me, first of all, to begin with, is that having picked up over 66 books, 12 months of reading, the first book that I read this year remained a standout, remains a book that I think about often, recommend often, and I feel like that is so rarely the case. Recency bias is so inevitable, so strong, right? The fact that the first book that I read this year has remained a banger, a favorite, front of mind, says so much, and that book is The Wedding People by Alison Espach. Espach, I still don't know how to say her name. This is actually, I think, the winner of the Goodreads Choice Awards 2024. This really had its moment. It got its flowers, it got all of the attention that it deserved. And I really am glad that I picked this one up because yes, it is a little bit of a rom-com, but it also toes this line between rom-com and more serious, melancholy literary story that I found it very fascinating how mixed its reception was, and I think it is because of how it toes that line that there were people who it just didn't land for. And I think that that's because there were people who went into it either expecting a rom-com and then they were like, oh, this is actually like quite dark or more slow paced than I anticipated or whatever it may be, or there were people who were expecting it to be purely more literary and heavy, and they were like, oh, this is actually way more fluffy than I was anticipating, and they didn't like it for those reasons. That's my theory at least, but I personally really enjoyed this book. I thought it was an absolute page turner for one thing. I was completely immersed in the story, and I actually loved the way that it balanced the subject matter with the lightness and the sort of like excitingness of that romance element without giving too much away, although I imagine a lot of you have probably picked it up. This follows Phoebe, whose 10-year-long relationship has broken down, and in the wake of that she books herself a stay at this really fancy hotel that she'd always been wanting to go to with her ex-partner, and she's like, honestly, fuck it, I'll just take myself there. So she books herself in, she arrives, and there's all these people dressed really nice in the lobby, and she goes to check in and they're like, and you're with the wedding party? And she's like, no, what wedding party? And it turns out that the hotel was supposed to be completely booked out for this wedding, and she should never have been able to get a reservation, but she has. And so she's like, well, give me my room, and they're like, fuck. And so now the bride is like, who the fuck is this stranger at my hotel that I booked out for my wedding? And Phoebe, who is, as we find out, at the hotel for some personal reasons more than just sort of having a one night nice stay, is also bugged by the presence of all of these people having a big celebration, and the two women are in these conflicting positions and they butt heads, and it is a really beautiful exploration of I suppose friendship in a way, or how women relate to each other. And then there's also, yes, a romantic element. It's really, really beautiful. I adored it. And, you know, at least if you're Australian, we're going into summer. I think this is the perfect summer beach read. I, obviously being somebody who doesn't pick up pure romances or, you know, lighter, fluffy, like quote-unquote beach reads. For me, a good beach read is still something that has some depth to it, some heavy themes, whatever, but with that sort of page turning, whether it be humor, whether it be just kind of a lightness or a fast pace to the story. This to me is a perfect beach read. So shout out to The Wedding People, my first book of 2025 and still a standout. Moving on actually to the second book that I read in 2025. I'm actually just going to take you through all six, no I'm kidding, but coincidentally the second book that I read in 2025, which I do actually recall reading on the beach, this was my beach read, although it's not really a beach read, at least categorically, was Station 11 that I finally picked up after finding it at an op shop. I had been intending to read this one for a long time since I watched the series adaptation, which is one of the best series. Let me actually, I believe it has a really high rating. Do series get Rotten Tomatoes ratings? Let me just, bear with me. Yeah, it has a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. So take that as you will. One of the best series of all time. So after watching that series, I like obviously had to read the source material. And yeah, this is such a beautiful book. This is a dystopian, I suppose, post-apocalyptic in a way. It was written in 2015, right? Yes, it was written in 2015. So well prior to the pandemic that we actually faced in 2020, but it is about a pandemic and it is eerily similar. Obviously, the pandemic that we faced didn't end the world as we know it. In this story, it does wipe out and end the world as we know it. And it is really this like quite beautiful, hopeful story about humanity. And the characters, I don't know, they really stuck with me. I feel like the characters in this really, like, they haunt me. The main character is, what's her name? Kirsten? And when we first meet her, she is a child actress in a Shakespeare play, and this is right before the pandemic hits. And then she makes an unlikely friend as the pandemic hits, and then we sort of skip forward and she's in her 20s and she's part of this traveling theatre company that puts on Shakespeare plays. And we jump back and forth and we meet a lot of different people along the way, and it's just really fascinating. I always enjoy a dystopian or a post-apocalyptic purely out of like fascination, but I thought that the way this was written was really, really beautiful. Like I said, the characters really stuck with me, and I did find it, as much as like there are bad people and bad things that happen in this story, it was quite a hopeful story. I want to give a quick shout out to Julia Fox's memoir, Down the Drain. Absolutely insane and so beyond my expectations. I'd seen a lot of people saying like, wow, this is crazy, and kind of expected, yeah, just like a kind of badly written celebrity memoir about like crazy dalliances in the world, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually like a really heavy, really harrowing life that she has lived. And she is a really good writer. Like, it was actually surprisingly well put together and I really enjoyed it and it's really stuck with me. So shout out to Julia Fox. We love her, our queen. The next absolute standout was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This is a book that I put off reading for quite a while. And let me just say, I will never learn, but it is so often the case that when I see a book being talked about A lot of people are raving about it, and for some reason I feel like, oh, I just don't know if it's for me, I just don't know if I'm gonna like it, and I kind of resist picking it up for ages and then finally cave and pick it up. So often in those circumstances I end up loving the book. So maybe one day I'll learn that when people are raving about a book that I don't feel is quite for me for whatever reason, that I most likely am gonna love it. But for now, I don't learn, and it surprises me every time. And it's kind of nice to be surprised, I will say. The reason that I resisted picking up Martyr is because the author is a poet. And historically, I've always really struggled with poetry or like quite poetry, prosy style writing. I don't connect with it as much as I would like to, and I feel that, yeah, it almost creates a barrier in terms of my ability to like emotionally connect with the story when the writing is too abstracted. So I just thought that I would struggle with it and it wouldn't land for me the way that it was for people, and I didn't want to like have an experience where I picked up a book that people were loving and I had to say that it didn't work for me. But I did finally pick it up, and I vividly remember reading the first sentence and then reading the first sentence again and then reading the first sentence again and being so in awe of how it felt so beautifully lyrical. Like every word choice was so deliberate, and the way that just the first sentence flowed and sounded and just like I couldn't believe it. And I don't know if I'd ever experienced that, where I open a book and read the first few words and go, holy shit, and like need to take a moment and read it again because it's so beautiful. So that really set the tone for my experience with this book, and yeah, it remained absolutely beautiful. It was not, in terms of like the poetry element, it wasn't what I was expecting at all. It was totally readable. There were, yes, elements of poetry in there, but they didn't push me away from the story. Like they worked. I found the characters and the story itself absolutely beautiful. It follows a young artist who has a very strained relationship with his father. His mother passed away when he was very young, and his father kind of never recovered from that, and so there's a very difficult relationship there, and he has his own like struggles when it comes to relationships, and he becomes sort of fascinated with this idea of martyrdom, and so he decides to I guess begin this art project that looks at martyrdom, and there's this artist putting on what would you call it? Can't really think of the right word, but essentially this prolific artist is very unwell with a terminal illness. They are in their last moments of their life, and they're doing essentially an installation at a local gallery where they will just be there spending their last days, weeks, whatever, in this gallery as a sort of performance art piece, and people are welcome to come and have conversations with the artist in their last dying days. And so our protagonist is like, well, I need to go and meet this person. This is like the perfect kind of conversation in terms of martyrdom. And we, yeah, I guess follow that and experience their conversation, and things are revealed, and it's very beautiful and very moving. And I would also remember being very impressed by the ending, the way that the story ended. I do think a lot of the time endings of stories are sometimes the most forgettable part, to me at least. So if an ending really sticks with me, at least in a positive way, because I thought it was done really well, like I think that is a really big reflection of really strong writing. So yeah, I guess from the first sentence to the last sentence, this book absolutely had me in awe, and I just feel like everybody needs to read Martyr. It's incredible. Also have to quickly shout out The Unworthy by Agustina Bazterrica. I'm still yet to read her short story collection, but I do want to read everything she's ever written because she's crazy and her mind is incredible. This is a dystopian, dystopian that follows a young woman who stumbles upon what was once a convent and is now called the House of the Sacred Sisterhood. It is a refuge that welcomes in women in this, you know, post-apocalyptic dying world, and all is not as it seems. There's some dark stuff happening. It's very gruesome. It's verging on horror, I suppose, but yeah, very political commentary, heavy feminist dystopian horror. Incredible, so moving, such an emotional roller coaster. But yeah, I absolutely adore Agustina Bazterrica's work. The next thing that I need to highlight is such a niche such a niche experience, but if you have the capacity to experience it, I highly recommend it. I just thought that it was so fascinating, and it just, okay, so let me tell you. I picked up Orlanda by Jacqueline Harpman, the paperback physical book. And at the same time that I was reading this, not like actually, but in the same sort of week, I was also on audio listening to Pageboy, Elliot Page's memoir. Now, Elliot Page's memoir is about his experience as a trans man growing up and in Hollywood. This is a modern-ish, it was written in 1999, retelling of Orlando by Virginia Woolf, which is essentially a story about a woman whose consciousness or psyche or soul, whatever you want to call it, splits into, half remains inside her body, the other half jumps into the body of a man. She kind of hijacks his body and experiences life in his body as well. Same thing, that's what happens in this. Our protagonist is actually reading Orlando at the train station and thinks, gee, it would be cool to do that, and then does it and jumps into the body of this man who's sitting across her at the station. So they are both stories about gender. And I want to say, I do think it's important to note that Jacqueline Harpman, when she was not writing, was a psychoanalyst. And so she clearly had a deep interest in human psyche and in exploring gender like this. Like, she was clearly sort of fascinated about those experiences, right? And in 1999, I'm not sure that we had terminology such as gender dysphoria, right? But what I found so fascinating in reading this while listening to Elliot Page's memoir, in which he tells his experiences, right, with gender dysphoria, among other things, were the parallels in the way that Jacqueline wrote the protagonist, female, in this story, and her experiences in how she felt about her gender, and the way that she explored and felt being inside the man's body and how that pertained to feelings she had in her childhood. So many parallels with Elliot Page's experience as a trans man. There, yes, is a lot in this that is problematic by today's standards, way things are worded, you know, little things like that, that it's sort of like, oh, not sure you can say that. So you take those elements with a grain of salt and a recognition of the time and how we've, you know, become a bit more educated about some certain things. But I just find it fascinating that on the surface, this is like a bit of a fun, speculative fiction, silly story about, yeah, someone who like jumps into the body of someone else and like kind of fucks up his whole life, right? Because she's just like going crazy with it. But it actually is rooted in so much truth and reality in the experience of gender and gender dysphoria. And I just found it really fascinating. And I adored Elliot Page's memoir, just like separate to anything else. Like, I think it is fantastic and such an important read. I learned so much from it. It's so fascinating. Always also just like love hearing a little bit of insider gossip about Hollywood. That's always so juicy. But yeah, just reading these two books side by side together, I almost at times became muddled with like remembering aspects or you know, parts that were being referenced. I was like, wait, was that something that I was reading in Orlanda or in Pageboy? I can't remember now because the similarities. Crazy, crazy stuff. I don't know if there's anyone else out there who has consumed both of these books side by side or at the same time, but if there is, can we please talk about it? Because it's kind of crazy. Kind of crazy, kind of really cool. A side note about Jacqueline Harpman also, did we all see that finally, I mean, not finally, I'm like, of course this has been happening and I'm sure it's going to continue to happen, but it has been announced that another one of her works are being or has been translated into English. So we are going to be able to enjoy a third story in English by Jacqueline Harpman. I'm sure that, you know, obviously I Who Have Never Known Men has been such a huge deal that I was not surprised by the republishing of Orlanda. This is now available in a very different hardback, not hardback, paperback version that is actually quite cute, super available. So they've republished Orlando and now they've got another book. Let me tell you what it is. Okay, it is actually a collection of novellas, I think 3 novellas, yes. It's titled We Were Forbidden and it is set for release in July 2026. It's the first work by Jacqueline Harpman to be translated into English in decades. I have no doubt that there is more to come, like I've said. The stories focus on the theme of defiance in various forms of female entrapment across different worlds and time periods, ranging from a post-apocalyptic forest to a rigid 1940s school and a conventional Belgian marriage. I am so fucking excited. Thank goodness that they are finally getting to work and translating the rest of Jacqueline Harpman's writings because that woman is fascinating and brilliant. Alrighty, the next book that I absolutely need to implore all of you to read, having just admittedly read out the AI generated synopsis like result to my Google search in regards to the Jacqueline Harpman books. That was the AI overview. So hypocrisy right here. But I do think we should all read The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates. Laura Bates is the author behind Men Who Hate Women. The work that this woman does, I have absolutely no idea how she sleeps at night. She exposes herself to truly the most heinous shit so that she can write about it and publish it and make sure that the world knows about it. She is an incredible, incredible woman and researcher. This book is about how AI and emerging technologies are reinventing misogyny. And when I tell you this was really, I actually did this in audio and I'm glad that I did. One, because I'm having a really great time consuming my nonfiction via audio. I am finding it a lot more digestible. Also, Laura Bates has such a lovely, gentle, sweet English voice that really kind of offsets the awful, awful content inside this book. It would be a lot to read on the page and really properly digest. But I do think that it is important stuff to be aware of. I'm, for the most part, very resistant when it comes to AI. It's scary and dire stuff, but I do think that, you know, there are a lot of common negative things that are being spoken about when it comes to the impact of AI. But what Laura is looking at in this book is really an aspect of it that is not being investigated too much. Like obviously we're very aware of deep fakes in terms of, but beyond that, we don't really conceptualize, or it's not part of the bigger conversation, the ways in which AI is really perpetuating sexism and creating new versions of sexism and new ways for there to be harm perpetrated against women. So yeah, it's awful stuff, it's heavy stuff, but it's such important stuff. So if you can, I think that you should absolutely read this book. I think that everyone should absolutely consume this book in one way or another. But we also need reminders of the beauty in humanity and all of the good things and the good people out there, you know, books that give us hope. So of course, The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong was another one of my absolute standout novels this year. Oh my goodness, Ocean Vuong, like one of the greatest writers of our generation, such a beautiful, beautiful, talented soul. The way that he thinks about people is just so beautiful. I can't imagine the place the world would be if we all thought the way that Ocean Vuong thinks. The fact that he has written this story, not even but just like not a hero's journey, do you know what I mean? And that's what I think is also really important, is to listen to interviews where he talks about this work and why he wrote it. He has essentially said that he wanted to write a story that was in no way a hero's journey, you know? So much of the fiction that we consume is, if it's about somebody who's experiencing hardship or who starts, you know, in poverty or in sort of nothing, mundanity, whatever, they end up achieving their dreams or having an amazing thing happen to them or falling in love or whatever it may be, right? There's always a kind of like a happy ending. They pulled themselves up out of that life or whatever it may be. And this is really a story of not only the protagonist, but really everyone in this story is like, this is their life and this is what it's gonna be. And they're not pulling themselves up out of it, and there's no big grand, you know, thing that's going to happen to them, no big fortune or whatever it may be. This is their life, and there's beauty in that as well, and that's an important story and you know, life worth writing about as well. And that in itself is so beautiful, but it also is just like a really beautiful, heartwarming story. It follows a young man who, you know, comes from this very small town, and he tells his mum that he's going off to college, and she's so happy for him, and he goes to the bus stop and he's not going off to college. He didn't get in. He has nothing ahead of him, but he didn't want his mum to worry and he wanted to make her proud, and he ends up on a bridge, and then he meets this old woman whose house is across from the bridge, and she sort of yells at him and she's like, "What are you doing out there?" And they strike up an unlikely friendship. And she is suffering from dementia, and he in a way sort of becomes her carer but also just her friend, and it, yeah, I guess follows along with this. And he works at a fast food restaurant, and so we meet the other employees of the fast food restaurant, we get to know them as well. And yeah, like I said, there's no grand kind of hero's journey here. There's not a lot going on. This is their life, this is their world, and I suppose you could say they're stuck there, right? But Ocean is able to portray the beauty in that as well, you know, and show us that those lives are important too, and yeah, worth writing about. So highly recommend. Just so beautiful, just so bloody beautiful. Oh my god. One that I really haven't seen many people talking about at all, and I do think that potentially it's because, at least in Australia, it is released in a hardback, but it's a hardback that is the price of a new paperback, so it's just annoying. Unfortunately, there is no date for a paperback release yet because not enough people have been buying it, but that's fine. I'm here to tell you once again, Sunstruck by William Rayfet Hunter. Fucking brillante. So good. This is Stormzy's imprint Murky Books. Stormzy has been championing some really great stories from diverse / marginalized voices under his imprint at Penguin. Super cool to see, like, big up Stormzy. This is Very much a Brideshead Revisited style story. It is everything that you wanted Saltburn to be if you wanted Saltburn to be a little bit more political at all perhaps. It, yeah, starts as this kind of like sexy, lusty, summery, sweaty, intense, very much Brideshead Revisited vibe, where our protagonist goes to the big house of this rich family, has a crush on the brother. Actually, I will say the brother is named Felix. So yeah, I was picturing Jacob Elordi, and that was fine. But it quickly spirals into something quite dark, and not dark in a Saltburn way, like dark in a race, class, power dynamics, political, like awful, abusive dynamics way. I don't want to give anything away, but I do feel the need to highlight the themes that are addressed. I just thought that it was a really, really well done piece of writing that, yeah, was kind of everything that Saltburn could and should have been. But if you are looking for something to fill that hole in your heart, I think you will fucking love this story. Like, Saltburn, Call Me By Your Name, like all those vibes, we all love them, right? As much as there is to be critiqued, we love them. This will fill that hole. This will do that. I cannot tell you to pick up this book enough. Why won't you listen to me? Okay, we're getting there. Home stretch. A book that I read while I was traveling on my e-reader, on my Kobo. Potentially really up there as one of the best books that I read this year. I just loved it so much. I thought it was so brilliantly done. It was Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. This is a body horror kind of story that is a commentary on the beauty industry and Western beauty standards. Very much, I imagine, because I haven't seen it, along the lines of The Substance, which, as far as I know, is a commentary on the beauty industry. It follows a young Chinese American woman who grows up as a piano protege until a sort of tragedy happens within her family that causes her to have to stop playing piano. She ends up working just as like a dish hand in a restaurant. Then she's randomly scouted one day by a hiring manager from this like cult beauty company and gets a job working for them, and as an employee of the company you get access to like all of their products and procedures and treatments, and things go from there. And obviously there's some dark stuff going on because it's a horror, but I just thought that it was so beautifully done. I thought it was, yeah, just really well executed. I was absolutely hooked, completely absorbed. When you sort of clock what's going on, it's like, holy shit. Ling Huang has since come out with another novel called Immaculate Conception, which is another kind of freaky, creepy, speculative fiction. This one is more about modern technology and how that interplays with the art world, so I will absolutely be picking that one up as well. I am, I think, a big fan of Ling Huang, having read one single book by her. But yeah, highly recommend Natural Beauty. Absolutely unforgettable story. If you can stomach a little bit of body horror in your reading, I'm not good with body horror. Just like skim read those bits. It's worth it, I promise. I will say the last few months of the year really were a bit of a weird time for my reading. There are not a lot of like big highlights to come out of the last few months for reasons, but I will say that Dead Ends by Samantha Byres is absolutely fabuloso. It really pulled me out of a slump. Yeah, a time when I was really struggling to enjoy anything. I read this and had a really great time with it, and I am so grateful to Samantha for writing this book and for it coming to me right when I needed it. Another one that I really haven't seen a lot of people talking about, so I think it deserves a lot more flowers. It is a crazy, chaotic, unapologetic, queer love story kind of thing. It follows Nell, who is 30-something years old, and she has returned to her hometown because her mother suffered a stroke. She has to go back and spend time with her, take care of her. She hasn't really been back to her hometown in a long time, and unfortunately she's like a little bit known in the town just because her best friend from her childhood died, and it was this whole thing. She comes back and she becomes kind of a little bit involved with her dead best friend's brother. And then also there happens to be this psychic medium in town who she grew up watching on the television. She's come back to the town to like film this new series, and she becomes entangled with the psychic medium's assistant as well. So there's your kind of love triangle. The psychic medium also, of course, maybe has a little something intertwined with her dead best friend. There's a lot going on. Like I said, it's chaotic, it's messy, it's very funny, it's very human. You end up like really actually feeling for and loving the protagonist Nell. Like, she is a fuckhead, but love her. And I just think that this was like a brilliant debut. Like, it was really, really good. I think another beach read, just in terms of like, yeah, it's a bit crazy, it's a bit silly, it's not that deep. Yeah, there's obviously heavy stuff going on, but it's more just like a chaotic fun story to like, almost like, for me at least, it was like a circuit breaker, you know? So absolutely loved Dead Ends by Samantha Byres. Obviously as well, Chosen Family by Madeleine Gray. You've heard me talk enough about that book, but you know you have to read it. You know it was one of my standouts. I could not stop raving about it. Seduction Theory by Emily Adrian as well. I really enjoyed it. I think that the narrative itself is like, yeah, it's done. Like, it's an affair story set in a college. We follow a married couple who are both professors at this college, and they both have respective affairs that take shape in their own kind of way. And the narrator of the story is one of their students who's essentially telling this like expose of their affairs and submitting it as a final assignment or something. And so it's very like biased and unrelatable narration. But what I really enjoyed was Emily Adrian's writing and her observations and her commentary within the story. It was just one of those books where I was underlining so much. Like, it was super sharp and witty, and I really appreciated that about it. Like, as much as like, yeah, the story is like a bit frivolous, it's juicy, like it's sexy and juicy, and I was into it. It's also very funny, but I think it's those sharp observations that make it funny, you know what I mean? So yeah, very much a book that is full of like lines that you want to underline, that you're like, oh, it's so true, so true, you know? And I do always love a book like that. I think as well, Loved One by Aisha Muharrar, that was like that as well. I underlined a lot in that book. I do really appreciate when an author can really capture very relatable nuances of the human condition, I suppose. Two more books, guys. We are almost there. The second last is Rejection by Toni Tulathimutte. Absolutely insane. When I first read this, I was like, how the fuck am I going to recommend this to anyone? I loved this crazy book, but how am I supposed to tell anyone to read this? It is such an insane experience. But now I'm like, nah, fuck it. All of you, read this book. It is very much online. It is about the worst people that you have ever encountered on the internet. It is not really a collection of short stories, but each chapter follows a different character who is facing their own respective form of rejection, and the way that that makes them spiral into an awful, insufferable person. It is deeply unsettling, deeply disturbing, highly satirical, but like so satirical that it kind of just like comes full circle and is just very mundane and real, which is kind of terrifying. These people really exist. I think Tony Tulathimutte is like one of the cleverest and most funny authors I have ever read. It kind of humor wise, like maybe I would like to see him and Eliza Clark have a conversation. I would like to put Tony Tulathimutte and Eliza Clark in a room. I'd like to have dinner with them, but not partake in the conversation, just listen to them talk. Because I think that they have similar minds, similar senses of humor, you know, the way that they really like to play with dark shit. Yeah, there's something there. So yeah, Rejection, absolutely. Pick it up, so worth it. Such a crazy time. Be prepared, but I don't think you'll regret it. I hope. And finally, you guys, I'm gonna end with something I listened to on audio, but did purchase the physical copy of, which I cannot hold up because it's currently in my friend's possession, because I am dishing this book out to everybody I know because it's so good. And it is Tart by the Slutty Cheff. Yeah, it is the anonymous Instagrammer's memoir of being a slut and a chef in London. I will say, I expected more sluttiness from her, to be honest. There's not that much sluttiness in this memoir, but it's okay because it is still deeply sexy. So sexy, so hot and steamy. The way I just love her writing. And I will say, yes, I listened to it on audio, so it was narrated to me by, oh my God, a narrator with the most beautiful, sultry, sexy voice, like the perfect casting for this, let me just say. Chef's kiss. But the way that Slutty Cheff blends the descriptions of being in a kitchen, cooking, high intensity, heat, with hookups and sex and tension and horniness and attraction, and it all just kinda, oh my God, beautiful. Anyone planning a hot girl summer, this is your Bible. This is your hot girl summer Bible. Absolutely get this in your hands, in your eyes, in your ears, whatever it may be, however you want to consume this book. Get it in ya. Slutty Cheff is my inspiration now. She is my queen and my inspiration, and I thank her for this book. It's just great. It's just a good time. It's just a really good time. If you like food, if you like... I just recommend it, okay? I just recommend it. So that's it. Those are the books that stood out to me the most this year. Should I now do a worst books of 2025 video? I kind of want to be a hater. Should I do it? Maybe I'll do it. I do though want to know what your standout reads were from the year, because like I said at the top of this video, I think it's been a really strong year for releases. I think that there have been some freaking fantastic books coming out this year. Plenty that I want to read and have yet to get to, but have no doubt are really good. So tell me what has stood out to you. Right? Let's sound off. Let's have a little kiki. I can't say kiki as an Australian. I don't even know what kiki means. Let's have a chat, as always, about what we're going to be reading, about what we've loved, about all the stuff. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening if you are on Spotify, or watching on Spotify. Hey. Yes. All right. That's me. The year is coming to a close. It's chaos. It's crazy. It's December. We're halfway through. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where we are. I will see you in my next video whenever that comes. I love you so much. Bye.